Hello and welcome to Who Dares Rolls TV. I'm your host Mike B, and here we are. Now today we're gonna delve into dungeons deep and soiled lands full of deviants, malcontents, sex dwarfs, other assorted perverts and weirdities. Yes, we're going to look at Goblinko's rather strange, somewhat twisted, kind of soiled almost, dungeon degenerates. Very briefly, let's run you through how it plays, and there is a lot of subtlety and nuance to the gameplay in this game, of which will not be transferred over in this review because I would probably spend about 45 minutes just explaining all the mechanics that are kind of thrumming away like a flux capacitor underneath the bonnet of this thing. That's kind of there's a lot happening. It's juggling and spinning plates at the same time while masturbating wildly into the face of a sex dwarf. It's that. So, how's it work? How's it play? So sequence of play is very straightforward. A lot of stuff in Dungeon Degenerates is very straightforward, and you go, that's very straightforward. And then rules happen and stuff and scenarios change and things happen and keywords occur, and suddenly that simple process is like something crazy. Some mad chaos magic has taken place. That's it. I think the whole game is just drenched in chaos magic. That's kind of it. So, sequence of play. You have a map action phase. Essentially what it is your heroes, your party of heroes, and when they're grouped together they are a party. They can split and go their own separate ways if you so wish. Dangerous, certainly dangerous, but something you can do. You have a map action. Now, instantly we have a choice. You have a status of your heroes during when you're bumbling around in the undergrowth doing things. Is you can either be cautious or you can bold and do out there. And that affects how far you can move, what you can do in that next round, and what potentially is going to happen to you at the end of that route. You're travelling across this garishly drawn, multicoloured, it looks like something, as I say, I think like a prog rock 70s album cover or just like the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers. It's kind of all that vibe of Robert Crumb, all that kind of dirty comic art. The stuff that your parents would never let you look at, and you look at and you go, I kind of like that, but there's something a bit filthy about it. That's Dungeon Degenerates. I lost my thread again. So yeah, we're picking a stance and we're going across the map with them. Now, story-wise, let's get that out of the way. Essentially, this is Dirty Dozen meets D&D. We're not bold heroes. We're not big, colourful paladins and all that. We're deviants. We're criminals. We're scumbags. We're escaping from a prison at the start of the game and going across. Now, there's a big campaign, sprawling campaign in this, which I can find the mission book somewhere. Here we have. There is the missions. You can play all of these missions individually. There's quite a few in here. Or you can play them as part of a campaign where you would set up the board, play for the first one of those, and then depending on your choices and that what happened during that first part of the adventure leads on, like a choose your own adventure, into the next part of the campaign, the next mission you're going to be playing, the next stuff you're going to be doing. So it has a nice bit of variety in there. There's already kind of, the world is changing as you go along. Very thematic. You need to embroil yourself in this filth to really enjoy it. So the main game is kind of almost a pandemic-ish kind of, you're controlling areas. Now, as you play for the game, areas will fall further into just descent of evil, really. There will be dangerous places. It slowly, as it goes, areas, roads, locations will become more corrupted. And they go from 1 all the way up to 6. Once you're reaching up into the areas of the 6 areas, when there's then dangers occur onto these places, you can then invoke the Hand of Doom, which is essentially some necromantic, evil high Palpatine Trumpian type thing hovering over the world, will start to just corrupting areas on the board and advancing this doom track. When it eventually reaches 5 dooms, that's it, it's game over. You've cocked it up. You all messed it up, and that's it. It's done. Game over, man. Game over. And of course, as his hand's moving around the board, it's also corrupting and putting doom on the board, which is doing all measurable, horrible things, which are sustained effects that affect you or your party or areas of the board, or areas demolished or destroyed. The world is kind of changing. With map actions, so as I say, we're choosing either cautiously or boldly move on there. That affects essentially how far we can move. We're moving around this board on roads. Now there's certain roads or paths. Roads have got a purple outline on them, so you can, if it's a boldened action, you can run all the way down the path towards wherever it's leading to. If you're cautious, then you're only moving one tiny little step. So rest actions, pretty standard in most of these D&D-ish adventure games, and usually they are kind of a miss a turn mechanic almost, where you don't really do anything, but you just get your health back. Kind of happens here, but with a lot more subtlety to it, a lot more going on. And nuances. Nuances is the word of the day for this game. You can recover your health, and again, it's all related to dice rolls. You can explore the area if you were bold doing this, so you might make a road safer to travel down, things like that, or you might find stuff. Find areas, find something in there. It's either going to help you when you're traveling, or potentially may even lead to something else happening. You can improve yourself, so you've an XP system in there. You can essentially use that to level yourself up. You can level skills you start the game with up to more powerful skills, give you more perks, or you can learn more skills and stuff, and they all kind of subtle tweaks to your character. You can invest in the town where you are, for instance. So if you're in like a dirty, bog-ridden settlement, you could potentially invest some money into it and improve it, make it safer in the environment around you, eventually leading to the point of reaching to a high enough level that you can reduce bounty levels, which means that people aren't going to be messing with you so much, and just generally good stuff happens, and maybe even a shop sets up. Or you can finally, of course, do trades where you can buy stuff in shops. In towns, and have a look what's around there. So that's all the kind of stuff you can do. That's just the map phase action. Following on from when we run around and cavorted along the area, there's a danger phase where we pour a danger card. And these will always result in an area on the board that will be named where its danger level increases, which we spoke about earlier, relating to the Hand of Doom. Some of them could also move the Hand of Doom around if it's on the board, if the Doom started to happen. Or they will either affect where you are or another area on the board. Stuff like that can happen. They also come with numbers on them. If they're not specific to an area, then they relate to where you are. And it's the danger level. You have to compare the two. Now, if the danger level of where you are is above the danger level on the card, then you're having an encounter. Some shit is going to go down. You're going to find something. You potentially have an encounter card, which can either affect the fight before it happens or have effects after it. And then you get monsters. So briefly stopping there just to go through monsters and combat and all that, what comes next. Essentially, when monsters are drawn, they appear on the board. They will specifically attack one member of your party relating to maybe the stats they've got. And they will have various entry effects, which can either bring in more monsters or maybe buff other monsters or have buff themselves or do other stuff. It's a lot of them. There's quite a lot going on. And all of this stuff is kind of on the back of the rulebook in some sort of detail. Like that. So there's all that happens. Then they might have effects in the battle. And essentially then we're going down to the good old-fashioned of rolling dice. And there's an awful lot of rolling dice in this game. If you don't like rolling dice, probably not for you. I love a dice, and it's great fun. We're rolling dice all over the place. Your characters come with a bunch of stats. You're always doing tests against any of those stats to achieve any of these things. If you want to go bold and run across the map, fine, but then you have to check your constitution. Have you got exhausted while doing that? In attack, you're rolling attack and defense dice. You roll all of them. And you don't roll anything for monsters. It's all based on your. So the red dice are always also attack dice. The green is your defense dice. And you've got the purple power dice, which you start with one. You can upgrade it later on. You essentially roll all these dice, you check them against the stats depending on what either weapons or equipment you're using, potentially that you're testing against. If you're successful, then you will do damage, and then you take the higher dice of your roll, and that is proportional to the monsters. And the green dice works as defense, and again, you use that against defense against what the monsters are hitting you at, and it's always the highest one of those ones are. Now the power dice can be used depending if you're bold or you're defending yourself during the fight, which you choose beforehand. The power dice is assigned to either your defense or attack. It essentially is another modifier die which you could use to replace the dice you've got. It always counts as the highest dice if you're using a defense or attack. So you roll 2 4s, then you've rolled a 6 on the power die, then that 6 can be used as that. As long as you pass your abilities, then you will successfully defend or attack. And that's it. You can kill monsters that way. If you kill them, you're going to gain XP, you're going to gain potentially loot from them. The effects, the area, things will be happening. All of that is going on. Now, there's a lot more mechanical stuff humming away. There's an awful lot of stuff. You're doing a lot of dice rolls in this. You get lots of status effects that can affect you on your health or whatever else. There's just a lot of moving parts. And initially, at the start of the game, when you start playing this, it's a head scratcher. You've got 2 reference cards, double-sided reference cards. You've got the rules book. So you're flicking through that. You've got maybe the mission book you might need potentially, especially later on, because there's effects running in there and what you might trigger. And there's so many different variables to everything going on. You're testing your characters might have weaknesses, maybe affect certain triggers at certain points in time, which is cool. They might be addicted, they might be narcoleptic. I don't know. There's all sorts of various things. Your equipment might have effect. Things you picked up along that. Stance effects may have effects on you. And at first, it is like this tsunami of words and text and numbers and tables, and you're just like, oh my Christ! And you kind of buff it against it. What you need to do is kind of lean into it and allow it to wash over you. Because suddenly there is a point of clarity comes. Maybe a couple of hours into the game, or definitely over subsequent plays, where everything kind of just starts to kind of dwell together and it all kind of makes sense. Now, a lot of the entry and things that affects the monsters are still sometimes weirdly worded. There is a vagary to it that you'll probably find yourself looking at them more often than not. But once you've nailed down the bare bone basics of the game, it's essentially make a decision, roll some dice. Did you achieve it? Yes, I did. Brilliant. What happens next? And then it's kind of, that's how it motor rolls along. So that's kind of a rambling, ramshackle overview of Dungeon Degenerates. And if you've not picked up during that just massive dribble, that there wasn't some level of elation in my voice, that I was maybe enjoying myself, then let me be clear to make that clear right now, like crystal clear. Yeah, I fucking love this. It's just madness. It's insane. It's complex. It's only on Kickstarter. I've mentioned before games that have that kind of not that polished feel. It feels far from polished. It's just spiky and painful and hard. It will take the skin off your hands handling this. It's that style of game. It's just got so many little quirks and minutiae and nuances, as I say, all this little stuff, synapses firing off of each other, creating this explosion of like colour, weirdness, strange components everywhere, tokens everywhere, stuff happening, colour. Oh my god, it's just this. It's very hard to kind of explain. It's just a lot going on, and it's joyfully fantastic once you grok what you're doing. There is like a couple of games into the game where you're into the campaign and some interesting crazy shit is going on, and the rules have become kind of at one with you. You've reached this kind of karmic state of dungeon degeneracy, and then you can kind of just play the game, and then just all sort of amazing crazy shit happens, and you're loving every single fucking moment of it. Feels like an 80s, it looks like an 80s 70s thing. It looks like something that was cooked up in with a bunch of hippies sat around in a room smoking an awful lot of pot, listening to some crazy fucking funky weird alternative music, and they cooked up over this and LSD, this creation. It's like, this is kind of what they would have cooked up, and it is that, and it's just this wonderful thematic thing that kind of just takes over your table and kind of like a fungus. It's kind of like athlete's foot all over the place. It's growing on you. So many bits and pieces, all these card decks, all this stuff going on. Now, I would say amongst all this elation, all this gibberish, there is issues with it. There is fiddly. There is bits and pieces. I mean, God, we've got about Terraforming Mars and the player boards on there. These things are just as bad. Tiny little card things there, which, you know, if you fart too close to the dinner table, they're going to scatter across. And you're like, oh, shit, what am I doing? So there's lots of that. There's tokens for everything, and so many tokens. And all of them look the same, and you're rummaging around trying to find them. So, yes. But then you wouldn't get all the nuance, all the kind of the grungy goodness that goes on in this game without all of that. And again, going back to what I've started in this ramble, was only as a Kickstarter game with this thing. There's no way a publishing house would have touched this with a barge pole. I mean, there's the off-putting art. It's very divisive. I imagine as many people look at it like I had and went, that's gorgeous, and call out to Sean Allberg, who's the artist behind this. It's a style of its own. It does call back, as I say, to the feel of that Robert Crumb Fabulous Freak Brothers, like kind of underground comic art feel to it, with this kind of prog rocky metal kind of feel going on in there. It's very metal all the way through. It feels like that sort of thing. It's that kind of adventure, and it can't be knocked for it not having some personality. This has got personality and then some. This is like the Superfly of board games when it comes to that. I mean, it's a one cool motherfucker. It walks into the room, it's like Django. Everyone's turning their heads. They're like, whoa, who is this dude? Rather than something like Runebound, which would kind of saunter in, a bit like a bookkeeper, and kind of gel around, but not really making a splash. So yes, I mean, I adore it. I love what it's doing. It's doing so many crazy, lovely, deviant things. I've just done a top 50 list, and I'd not played this nearly enough or really looked at it in any great detail before that, and already I know that this would be on that list. So the list is invalidated already, but it is, and it comes close to challenging the likes of stuff like Gloomhaven I enjoy, in that it's much more of an enjoyable, thematically deep, weird. I love this world. I love these characters. It's perfect for me. It's anti-heroes. There's no one's a good guy in this. They're all scumbags. All probably the worst of the worst of the worst. But God, if you could just embrace it and enjoy what it's doing, this Dirty Dozen meets the Evil Dead style thing going on, then you're in for a treat. There is just so much spinning and moving around. I keep looking at it. I'm drawn to the art on the board. It's just a thing of just sexy, weird glory. I mean, it's just, ooh. So yes, I really fucking love the game. It isn't for everyone. I know some people are going to look at it and go, Jesus Christ, what the fuck? And I want to know with the art, but you're missing out. If you're a fan of dungeon kind of experiences that kind of grind and building up characters and leveling up and exploring a strange, weird alien world, then you are missing all of that because of an aesthetic appeal. Yes, it's a clunky design. Yes, there's a lot of fiddliness to it. Yes, initially the learning curve is like the Cliffs of Doom level of thing. I mean, you are, your first 2 or 3 rounds of games are just you going to be waving books around and checking tables and checking again and rolling some dice. Oh shit, and all that. And then even after a good few plays, you'll reach a point where something is going to throw a curveball at you where you've not encountered for a long while or at all, and you're back at the book and, oh, what's happening now? There's loads of decks. I mean, look, the components alone of this thing, there's tons of stuff in here. Loads of decks, loads of tokens, meaning that every game is never going to be the same. And all of it's kind of grotty and amusing. There is some strange stuff going on in here, and for me personally, I'm loving every single second of it. It's just joyfully weird, twisted. I mean, it's like they kind of channeled my inner twisted Sex Dwarf brain and went, yes, Mike will enjoy this. This is good. Then there's an expansion, which I'm not even touching, the Mean Streets thing, which has more weird, fucked up heroes and some new mechanisms and more stuff into the game, and more player aids and sets. Oh my god! So there is just, this is something. To be fair, now I've dug into it, that I could potentially spend the rest of my adult life farting around with. So without any hesitation, I give it a thorough. We're upstanding in anticipation of more Dungeon Degenerates. It's a lovely game. It's a great game. It's a weird game. I really enjoy it. Have you got that? I love it. It's fantastic. What a great, twisted, screwed up game it is. Right, well, that I've been Mate B. This has been Dungeon Degenerates, highly recommended. And we'll be back soon with some more reviews, I'm sure. I'm exhausted. Gotta go beat up a sex dwarf.